Hey guys, thank you for all the positive feedback on our previous videos. We want to clarify something before we get started on the next one. Things shown in the video do not necessarily represent what is taught in the IPT course at UOP. While in the future we may work with faculty to ensure that such is the case, we are not able to at this moment. For now, these videos are completely student-made with the help of the peer tutoring program here at Pacific. The methods and work shown may not be perfect, but we are confident you will be able to learn from these videos.
Now that you have put a giant hole in your tooth, let's fill it up. At Pacific, we use the Trident V3 ring system. We will first start out by placing a Trident matrix. When choosing the matrix size, I usually choose the one that is a little higher than the marginal ridge of the tooth that is about to be restored. You can use the marginal ridge of an adjacent tooth as a reference. Then place the wedge in a lingual to buccal direction into the embrasure. If the remaining embrasure space is still too big, you can place another wedge from buccal to lingual or use a larger wedge. This will provide you with convex shaped fills with the proper height to match the proximal surface of your Class 2 preparation. Using the proper wedge will give you a truly anatomic form with an ideal contact. Next is the placement of the V3 ring. Place the notches in the ring on top of the wedge. Be sure the ring is seated all the way by pushing it down. Always check for a complete seal in your box with the matrix after it is fully set up. This ensures minimal leaking of composite buccolingually and gingivally. If your matrix is not completely sealed, you can tighten the seal by pulling on the sides of the matrix with cotton pliers or putting your explorer through the hole. Be careful, you can break through the hole quite easily with a lot of force. After the placement of the matrix system is completed, burnish the matrix against an adjacent tooth to ensure that you have a proper contact. Some second years like to burnish only on the contact area by picturing it on the matrix. This allowed for a perfect amount of contact. I also fold the tab on the top of the matrix against the adjacent tooth. This gives you a reference for how high your marginal ridge should be. Now that your matrix is all set up, we can fill your preparation. The following two items are used in the clinic but are not necessary for simulation since you are using plastic teeth. We etch all areas of enamel first, which include the occlusal caval surface, the box form, and exit angles. Then we etch the dentin. Enamel should be etched for at least 15 seconds, while the dentin is at most 15 seconds. After etching, thoroughly rinse and dry, but make sure you don't desiccate the tooth, since the collagen fibers in the dentin will collapse. Next step is adhesive. We will scrub OptiBond for 10 seconds and air thin to evaporate excess solvent. Note that if you put too much OptiBond, you will end up with lots of flash on the surface to get rid of at the end. Light cure the OptiBond for 20 seconds. This step is not required, but I like to place a thin layer of flowable. Make sure you get the flowable into the corners of your prep with your pigtail explorer to avoid voids. Any void is a potential area for recurrent caries. Light cure it for 20 seconds. After flowable, we will layer composite. Make sure each layer doesn't exceed more than 2 mm. I like to use mini W3 paddle and condensers to pack composites in. When packing the composite, I like to have wetting resin on my gloves. Wetting resin will allow you to avoid air bubbles when packing in the composite and prevent the composite from sticking to your instrument. I first fill my box up to the pulpal depth, then I will fill both the occlusal surface and my box together. I like to use my acorn burnisher when placing pits and grooves. Remove the excess with your paddle or an explorer, or you will have a harder time removing them after you cure. Make sure you have a round marginal ridge. Use an explorer against the matrix to round your marginal ridge. Avoid pushing too far apically since that will likely ditch your composite. Orient the explorer with the curve facing the composite filling and push the point into the matrix to avoid ditching. Hold it in place and swipe back and forth. To make your ridge even rounder, be sure to put a nice mesial pit in so that the slope is well defined. Light cure it for 20 seconds. When finished, carefully remove the ring and the wedge. With the matrix gently pushed away from the filled tooth, light cure each proximal side for 20 seconds. Remove the matrix. After evaluating the proper anatomy and contours, I will start clearing excess flash. If you have successfully obtained a proper anatomy and contour of your fill, there won't be much finishing to do. My favorite go-to tool is my Hollenbachs and discoid cleoid. You may also use fine carbide burrs and discs, but I prefer using my dental anatomy tools because they are less aggressive and less likely to take away tooth structure. However, it does take a little longer than using burrs. Be sure to lay your Hollenbach on both tooth structure and the composite. It will help carve in anatomy and make the margin at the caval surface flush. Interproximal overhangs occur when the matrix is not well sealed. To our understanding, you are not allowed to use sanding strips, so the only way for you to avoid overhangs is to have a perfect seal on your box with the matrix. Confirm this before you begin your fill. A good method to check if your marginal ridge is the correct height is to compare it to the adjacent tooth. If your explorer passes through in both directions, you are in the clear. If it gets caught in one direction, the ridge that your explorer is pointing to is higher than the other. If you prefer to use carbide finishing burrs, I would recommend using the yellow burr since it gives a smoother finish and is less aggressive. When removing flash off the caval surface of your preparation, be sure to have half of your burr on the flash on the tooth structure and half of it on the composite fill. Picture proper locations of the grooves and the pits and follow the triangular ridges of the occlusal table. This should give you a good guide of the correct anatomy. When done finishing, evaluate all contours with an explorer and adjust as needed. Check for flash by using your explorer like this. You should be able to feel a click when it passes from the tooth structure onto the composite or feel a textural difference. Use a light grip on the explorer, it makes your hands much more sensitive to any changes. Also, in clinic, it is crucial to check for occlusion. A high filling will cause the patient to feel lots of sensitivity and will come back with pain. A low filling will trap food and not occlude with the opposing tooth. Now go through the polishing sequence. Use the white point, the blue point, and diamond paste brush. The diamond paste brush will give you a shiny finish. Adjust the speed of your burr with the rheostat and keep it from getting too hot. It can still burn your tooth. The more time you spend on the first steps of carving anatomy before curing, the less time you'll spend finishing the composite. And the more time you spend on finishing the composite, the less time you'll spend on polishing. Be as accurate as you can initially so that you save yourself time in the end during the practical. Good luck everyone, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
Let's cover the burrs we use in a little bit more detail. You have several tools available to you in your student kit for finishing. The first is football burrs. These burrs are great for finishing pits in composite restorations. The rounded end also lends itself to creating smooth anatomical features. These were my burrs of choice when refining my occlusal composite anatomy because they did not create jagged and sharp edges. It's a double-edged sword, however. The football shape is convex in nature, and your composite restoration ridges are also convex in nature. This means that you can finish very specific aspects of your composite without engaging a significant portion of your fill. However, this also means that if you're not careful, you'll create concave surfaces that will result in undercontoured, underfilled composite restorations or harm to the original tooth structure, both non-ideal situations. You also have Christmas tree burrs. These burrs are good for shaping triangular ridges and line angles. They are, however, prone to creating nicks and rough anatomy if you're not careful. Therefore, I found it very difficult to use these burrs and achieve a reliable result. You also have OptiDiscs. OptiDiscs are good for shaping the interproximal fill. Dark red is for contouring and can remove large amounts of structure. Red is for finishing, orange is for polishing, and yellow is for high gloss polishing. You also have several tips available to you in your student kit specifically for polishing. You should not polish your composite until you are satisfied with the anatomical features of your restoration, because you are unlikely to alter your fill's anatomy with polishing. The White Gazelle satin polisher should be used to remove minor surface striations and anatomical defects. The keyword being minor. You want to apply a feather-light pressure while using this tip, but make sure you also engage the restoration well. Too light and you'll be polishing all day. Too heavy and you'll wear through the polishing tip very quickly and even potentially damage the tooth. The Blue Gazelle High Gloss Polisher should be used to give your restoration a shiny enamel-like finish. It's the finishing, or should we say the polishing touch. You also have access to the Occlusal brush, which is also a very good polishing tool. They are available in different shapes and provide fast, non-destructive polishing to tooth surfaces. I hope you all find this helpful in preparation for your practical. Thanks to Brian and Lisa for taking the time to help with this video, and a special thanks to Dr. Bender and the IPT Peer Tutoring Program for helping make this test run of videos possible.